What's up, everybody? Welcome back into Tide Talk Live, back with another post-spring depth chart projection. And today we're going to be looking at the wide receivers, a position group that's got some question marks, Jake. I think there's some playmakers in that group as well, but it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of dive into this position group and look at the depth chart and who we think can make plays for this Alabama offense here in 2023. But before we do that, make sure you like, share, and subscribe today. We're well over 2,000 subscribers, so thank you so much for that. Help us reach 2,500 as quickly as possible, and we would really appreciate that as well. Jake, it's been a couple weeks since we done one of these. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Cannot wait to dive into this conversation.
Man, I'm excited about this. Just doing the entire team, post spring depth chart position is going to be really fun. But I'm doing great, man. Good to be back here. And how are you doing tonight?
I'm great. I'm great. Excited, like I said, to just get back in talking some football. I think it's 100 days from the start of the college football season. It's about 100, I don't know, 110 days or so, 109 days before Alabama plays. So that'll be here a lot quicker than what we realize. But we still got all summer to kind of dissect this team and look over this roster and give our thoughts and opinions on what we think this version of the Crimson Tide can do this fall. But Jake, let's just start right here with the wide receivers. I think there's really probably 6, maybe 7 guys that can probably get into that first team rotation. And instead of going, with X, Y, and Z receivers, because Alabama likes to move their guys around a lot to kind of create mismatches, that they kind of make all the receivers learn each of the positions so they can move around on the field and they're not just
Right.
designated on one spot. So instead of looking at the X, Y, and Z spots, we're just going to look at like 6 or 7 guys that we believe are going to be contributors to this team in 2023 and get a lot of reps, or the majority of the reps, with the first team offense. And Jake, I think when you look at this group, to me, you have to start with a guy like Jacory Brooks. And I know Malik Benson comes in kind of as that JUCO guy. He's the next great, Jamison Williams top player as far as impact goes. And I'm not sure he's going to reach that level of success the way that JMO did.
Hmm.
But I have a feeling that Jacory Brooks is a guy that a lot of people, including Alabama fans, are kind of sleeping on entering this season.
Yeah, I agree, man. Jacory Brooks, he's coming into his, like I said, third season, I believe. And, he hasn't had that breakout game yet. Now, he showed out a few years ago in Auburn, and he showed his flashes what he can do. But this year, I think he's going to make that next step. And, whoever the quarterback's going to be, we've already talked about the quarterback situation and all that, but whoever the quarterback's going to be needs to have a guy they can depend on a third down situation. And Brooks needs to be that guy because he's the most experienced on this roster at wide receiver.
Yeah, and look, Brooks was a 5-star receiver coming out of high school. I've talked a bunch on this show, and I think fans get lost in the 5-star hype. Not all 5 stars are created equal.
Right.
Each recruiting cycle has a different layer of a 5-star prospect. So I think we get caught up in the stars a little too much. Not that they're not important, but not. It's important to remember that not all 5 stars are created equal. Jacory Brooks is obviously a talented kid. He's gifted. He's 6'2", 6'3", right around 200 pounds. Great athleticism, but he's really had to learn this position. Look, he relied on nothing but his God-given ability in high school. But coming to college, it's a totally different game. You're playing against guys that are great athletes too. So you
Hmm.
have to learn the nuances of the position. You have to learn how to run routes, the correct feet to take your break in. I mean, there's so many different things that you have to learn at receiver, how to block your guy. So Jacory Brooks is kind of putting that all together. Now that he's had 2 full seasons under his belt in Tuscaloosa, I really believe that his junior season is going to be a year that is a breakout year for him, and he really shows that 5-star potential that he come out of high school with. And I'm excited to kind of see what he does there. I think once I already mentioned Benson, I think Benson's
Hmm.
probably the next leader in the clubhouse, so to speak, in the wide receiver room. I know you're probably wondering, what about Jermaine Burton? Well, Jermaine Burton's just one of those guys where he's not a great player. He's good kind of when he wants to be, Too many drop passes, too many inconsistencies in his route running, in his, I don't want to say his effort, but just he doesn't seem to always play the same way every game. He's too up and down, and when you're not consistent, you're not going to see consistent playing time. So I think the next guy in line is going to be Malik Benson, the JUCO guy from Kansas City, and I really believe that he's destined to be a star for this Alabama offense.
Yeah, Benson looks like he's going to be the dude. And but we always talk about you can't coach speed. You talk about that kid's got speed. So I'm excited to see what he can do in the open field. That was one thing that kind of hindered Alabama last year was we didn't have the guy to go over the top to open up a defense. So having that threat is going to be key. And then you have other guys. You mentioned Burton, but like Kobe Prentice coming back, who played a lot last year. Kendrick Law, Isaiah Bond, some of the guys who can play that slot receiver. That Benson goes deep. Jacory Brooks does like a 10-yard out or something. Then the other ones in the slot does a 5-yard out or something. It's just a mismatch problem. And that's what we need out of these wide receivers this coming up year.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see how new offensive coordinator Tommy Rees kind of utilizes all these young, talented wide receivers that Alabama has. Because before we get too far into it, Jake, we've already talked about Jacory Brooks, we've mentioned Malik Benson and Jermaine Burton, and then you get to those guys who are second-year players: Kobe Prentice, Isaiah Bond, Kendrick Law, Emmanuel Henderson. You talk about all those young guys are more than capable of making plays for this offense. And I think Tommy Rees is probably excited about what he has at wide receiver from a talent perspective, but I bet he's probably hoping to see it kind of on the field and in person once fall camp arrives. They have a little bit of time to gel together with a new quarterback, with a new offensive coordinator. And I think this fall, Tommy Rees is going to get a good idea of what he has at wide receiver. And what he has is great depth. Maybe not a superstar, but he has great depth with a bunch of high-quality SEC players.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you saw what that group could do last year. Flashes, that is. Late in the season, Isaiah Bond started showing out. Kobe Prentice started showing out. And then I think Kendrick Law was one of the bright spots in A-Day. So, there's talent there. There's not a star player, but collectively with their talent, they can be a great collective unit. So
I think like you said, that as a unit, they are really good. Maybe
Right.
there's not that one superstar, but that could be one of those things where we say there's not a superstar yet.
Right.
I mean, I think there's more than one guy that's capable of becoming a superstar in that wide receiver room. And to me, before we go too much further, Jake, you think about, we talked about there's probably 6 or 7 guys that could take the majority of the snaps with the first team. Just real quick, is there a guy that you're expecting to have a surprise season for Alabama from the wide receiver room? I know I kind of threw you a curveball there, but
No, you're good. You actually brought his name up a while ago, and that's Emmanuel Henderson. He's he come in as a running back, and they moved him to kind of like a slot guy. But he's another guy who's got a lot of speed. So if they continue to develop him, he's got a chance to be special. And he showed flashes, I believe, as well in the A-Day game, what he can do. So, look out. He could sneak in the lineup later in the season for sure.
yeah, I wrote a piece a couple weeks ago for Roll Tide Wire, kind of doing the same conversation that we're having right now. And, a guy that I kind of brought up as a sleeper is Emmanuel Henderson, and he's like you said, he come in as a 5-star athlete. Really, most services had him as a running back, but he shows up. He's like 6'1", 170, soaking wet. Alabama's already got a stable of backs with more on the way. And then you look at the wide receiver room; it's a little bare at that point in time when he gets in Tuscaloosa last year. It looks like the future for him is at wide receiver. He's not really quite physical enough to be an SEC running back. So he makes that move. It's totally new to him. Never played anything but running back in high school. So it's a new position, a new technique to learn, a new way of playing football for him. So He's had that learning curve. It's been a year. You can see, like you said in A-Day, he's starting to feel more comfortable at that position. And the athleticism's there. There's no question about that. He has all the physical tools that you're looking for in an elite slot playmaking wide receiver. So I think he's probably being slept on a little bit. But Kendrick Law is another guy. Coach
Yeah.
Saban talked about him a lot this spring. Bragged on about how he was one of the leaders of the offense this spring, a true sophomore wide receiver. So
That's awesome.
I'm kind of excited to see what Kendrick Law does. He reminds me a lot of John Mechie. You kind of get all the dirty work done for you. A good possession type receiver. Probably not a huge burner, but a big physical receiver, about 5'11", 200 pounds. So he's built sturdy. He's built low to the ground, built almost like a running back, truthfully. But I think he'll be a really solid player. Kind of pick up those first downs for Alabama on short and on third medium. So I think those two guys right there could kind of sneak into making a breakout season, so to speak, from the wide receiver room.
Yeah, I agree. And Jacory Brooks, I think, like we said, is going to make that next step. And he's going to be the
Right.
go-to to either whoever the quarterback's going to be, and then you're going to have a stable of great guys to spell Jacory Brooks when they're out there.
Yeah, I think we're both kind of seeing this in the same way. How it's probably the primary guys are going to be Jacory Brook and Malik Benson. They're going to be wide receivers 1/1A or one
Right.
B, whatever it is, and then it's the other guys who kind of fill in certain roles. And I really think that's going to make for a great opportunity for this offense because we all know that Nick Saban's wanting to get back to a more physical brand of football. Probably going to play more tight ends this year than what we've been playing the last few years. Rely on the running game, rely on the physical nature of the offensive line, and then pick your spots in the passing game with your wide receivers. So we don't necessarily need an elite playmaker out wide. It does make things easier for a quarterback in an offense if you've got one of those. And I certainly believe that there is potential for a superstar in that group. We just haven't seen it yet, but there is that potential there, I believe, from that group. And you brought it up. It's about Jacory Brooks taking that next step. It's about Malik Benson doing his job, and then the rest of the guys kind of filling in their roles as well. So I'm
Right.
excited to see what this group can do this fall. I know this wasn't really a depth chart, but the way we look at the receivers, it's they really kind of all play. They're all play the same position. They're all receivers. It's
Right.
not just a X, Y, and Z. Alabama doesn't limit their players to just X, Y, and Z. They kind of move those guys around. So we believe that it's going to be Brooks, Burton, Benson, Bond, the four Bs. Then you
Right.
got Law, Prentice, Emmanuel Henderson. I'm sure there's guys we're forgetting about.
Shaz Preston.
Shaz
I mean,
Preston,
I mean,
Jalen Hell, Jaron
yeah.
Hamilton, Tyu Jones Bell, a guy who's been there 47 years. And, kudos to that guy, by the way,
I
for sticking
know.
around. There's been guys that's been above him on the depth chart that's already transferred out, like JoJo Earl.
Yeah.
Who am I missing from last year? Aaron Anderson. Those guys were
Anderson.
ahead of Tyu Jones
Right.
Bell, and here Tyu Jones Bell still hanging around with the Crimson Tide.
That just to me just shows to me that he wants to play just to wear that jersey for Alabama. That's real commitment right
Well,
there. I
it
love it.
tells me that. It also tells me that he probably realizes that his future is not football, and that degree from the University of Alabama is going to carry him a long way.
Absolutely, absolutely,
But kudos to him for sticking it out, man. I mean, that's awesome.
absolutely. Yeah, it is. I mean, he's the type of player we used to have back in 10, 15 years ago before
Yeah.
transfer portal got on, and you had the competition. You didn't never see anybody transfer out. So kudos to him.
Yeah, and when you did, it was guys who had been there like Tyu Jones Bell 3 or 4 years. They're obviously not going to crack the starting lineup,
Right.
and so it's time to move on.
Yeah.
But we can save that conversation on the quitters for another day.
Oh, we could do that all night. Good night.
But yeah, that's going to wrap up our talk on the wide receiver depth chart projections for post spring as we kind of head into the summer months before the 2023 football season. Like we said, just a little over 100 days before Alabama kicks off against Middle Tennessee State on September 2nd. Also, quick programming note: it was announced that Alabama Texas will be a night game, 6 o'clock on ESPN for Week 2
Ooh.
under the lights in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I bet those tickets are going to be outrageous.
Yeah,
And good luck finding a hotel room down there.
yeah, I'm sure they're already sold out.
I bet Texas fans has bought every hotel room available.
Probably so. I just hate for him to go back home and cry, that night because I,
Oh,
I feel good about this team this year.
what's crazy? Now that the kickoff time has been announced, it makes me want to talk about the game because you can kind of plan your day now around watching that game, and you can kind of
Right.
feel it kind of feels like game day. So, but we'll save that for later date. We want to continue doing our depth chart projections here. We're almost finished with the offensive side of the football. We've got the quarterbacks, the running backs, now the receivers. We'll do the tight ends next, and then we'll move on to the offensive line, and then we're done with the offensive side of the football, and then we'll move on over to the defensive side. We'll probably just do that in three groups. We'll look at the defensive line, the linebackers, and the secondary.
Yeah.
So just a few more episodes, and we'll have our post-spring depth chart projections wrapped up, and then we'll move on to some fun stuff through the summer months, like some of our top saving players, or we'll come up with some creative ideas to kind of pass the time in the dog days of summer. But Jake,
hmm
been a lot of fun catching up, man. Can't wait to keep diving into these depth chart projections. Been a lot of fun. If you're not already, like, share, and subscribe today. Help continue to build our brand here at Tide Talk Live. We certainly appreciate that. We would not do
Thank
this
you.
if it wasn't for the support that you guys give us. So we really, really appreciate that. But that's going to wrap it up. Cannot wait to get back on here again soon. But until next time, roll Tide.
Roll Tide.